Hello everybody. Welcome to, I think we're on week 6, probably, maybe, something like that. I know you guys are starting to work on your like triggered events, so I figured I would tell you guys about interfaces. Now, if you've watched Intel's videos already, which I hope you guys have done, you'll have seen that you can pass around like whatever interacted object you've overlapped with. You can say like, oh hey, I've walked into a box, go tell that thing to do a thing. And in those videos, Santello had you guys casting to whatever it was. He also had you doing I think it was like a level cinematic, I think they're called, something like that. Level sequence. And as you go forward, you might start noticing that these things aren't very they don't play nice with doing a whole bunch. So, for example, I have 3 objects here, and if I wanted to interact with each of these, I would need to cast to each of these different actors in my wherever I have that E key happening. So just for argument's sake, I've done the cast to E instead of doing an interface or the input action is fine. And so from whatever your interaction target, you'd have to do like cast to door. I don't have a door in here. But have a cube. I'd have to cast to the actor and then tell it to go and whatever. And as you guys start getting more and more actors, especially if you have a bunch that you need to interact with, it can get a little crazy to have to cast and then cast and then cast and then cast. I wouldn't recommend it. So what we can do is we can set up an interface. So to make an interface, you right click, go to blueprints, and then you do a blueprint interface. Now what this is it's just a way that there's not a lot going on in these. They're pretty much just placeholders. So anytime you have something that implements an interface, it lets you have these like default functions that anything can call then. So in interact interface, I just have a function called interact with. Now I could add as many as I want. Like let's say you have something where you know how you have like tooltips popping up. I could have like a look at function, so it like returns whatever you're looking at. In one of my other projects, I had an interact with item as well. So if I interacted with an item active, it would use that item. The item would come in and then whatever would happen. You can add as many as you want here. What then happens is we can come over to your actor and you go to class settings and you go to interfaces and you click add and then you add whatever interface you made. In this case I had my interact interface. From there you'll see it comes up here and you just can double click and then you can tell it, hey, this is what happens when interact with gets called. In this case I've just told it to print a string. And same thing with this one, the other one not so much. And then from there, anytime you pull off an actor, you can just type interact with, and this will come up. And so I can just tell it to go. If the actor has that interface, it'll use it. If it doesn't, it'll just move on. So in this instance, I've just done the whole like when you overlap, and instead of having an awkward like back and forth, what I've done is I've just told the character like, hey, any actors that you're overlapping with, go through each of them and tell it to try to interact with when I press the E key. So let me go ahead and show you guys that in motion. So, computer, hello. All right. So if I walk up to this cube and I press E, you can see it says, hello, I'm a cube. If I walk up to the sphere, hello, I'm a sphere. Now with the current one that I have set up, that does mean I can get between these and activate both of them. Maybe you want to do that, maybe you don't want to do that. That's up to you to figure out, like, hey, do I want that or not? This also translates really well with like the line trace, so all you'd have to do is whatever you're looking at, tell that hit actor to run interact with. Easy as that. Obviously there's a bit more setup to getting line trace working, but that's something for another day. For now, I've got just whatever I'm overlapping. If I press E, tell them all to interact. Now, this also works for like doors and stuff. So if I come over here, I can say, hey, open sesame. Whee! And all of these just use that interact interface. I didn't have to do any casting, didn't have to do any back and forth. They just know, hey, when I'm interacted with, print my string. When I am interacted with, open. I don't know why they just disappeared on that. So you can see here, yeah. And if you want, you can do a boolean here. I learned about flip-flops not that long ago, so they're fun. I like them. They mean I don't have to have an extra boolean in here, but you could just have like the branch, and then if it's true, go to open. If it's false, go to close. Now the other thing I wanted to bring up, because I did mention the whole like level sequence, you don't have to do a level sequence. So if I needed a whole bunch of doors, what you can do is you can just tell, you know, in that actor, hey, this is like the animation I need you to play. So what I've done here is I've set up what's called a timeline. Now, to do this, you just do timeline, and you click add timeline, give it whatever name, it's just like an event. You then double click, and you can give it whatever tracks it needs. So I just made a door float. It lasts 0.7 seconds, and then I gave it 2 keyframes. One's at 0, 0, and one's at 0.71. This could also be one that I forgot how to do this, so I was following a tutorial, and that's what they did. Then what happens is I can tell it to, start, stop, reverse, go, whatever. You can tell it to play from the start, play from the end. But how I have it set up right now is when I press E and the door is set to open, so it's come through the first time, let's say, it'll tell it to play. By default, it starts at 0. It then comes through, and it keeps going until it reaches the end of the timeline. And this is that like 0 to 0.7 thing. And I tell it to go from 0 to 90. And then I plug that into, I had to set up a rotate point because it wasn't rotating right. I tell it to like go between 0 and 90, open or close or whatever. So this is in charge of going from 0 to 1. And then this takes up 0 to 1 and goes from 0 degrees to 90 degrees. And then I plug that into the rotation. That also works in reverse. So if I tell it to go the other way, it goes from 1 to 0. And since this is already set up to handle that, it just tells it to rotate in reverse. Since I've plugged this into play in reverse instead of play from start and reverse from end, that means I get to do, I can interrupt the animation as well. Cool, right? I hope I explained that well enough. Let me know if you guys have any questions about any of this. But yeah, so anytime you have something that you need to be able to be handled from multiple actors, I would definitely encourage using an interface. And anytime you have internal animations like this, I mean, timelines are kind of nice, I'm not gonna lie. And they can handle more than just rotation. When you have something like a door, I would highly recommend using a timeline instead. With something like, I think Santo had like moving platforms, that's something you probably want to have as a, I've already forgotten what it's called, level sequence, because that's something that's actually moving around in your level, so you probably want to see what it's doing in the level. So, but the whole point of all of this is so we can show you, what tools you got, and then you can decide how best to use them. So, yeah. Like always, please let me know if you watch this video so that way I can log everything I need for work. Once again, if you have any questions, just let me know, and I hope you all have a wonderful